Hey guys, today we are going to go over argumentative vocabulary. The reason why I want to go over this is because we are going to be reading several essays in class, so we need to know how to analyze those and what some of these terms mean and what they look like in writing. And then, of course, you guys will be doing some research on your own, so it's important that you know what exactly you're looking for. And then also when we go to write our argumentative essays, there's different components within the writing itself that a lot of this vocabulary is going to cover, so we need to know exactly what these things look like. All right, so just in general, I want to talk a little bit about what argumentative writing is. So an author decides to make a claim about a topic. It could be any topic, it's just whatever it is that they're writing about, they make a claim. And then they defend their claim or their stance on this topic, whether or not they're for or against it, with relevant evidence from reliable sources. Every main argument then has a counter argument where the other side's perspective is addressed and then proven wrong with additional evidence by the author. So the two argumentative essays that just essays that I have off to the right-hand side, you can kind of see the difference in the length, and this really is the main difference between a persuasive essay versus an argumentative essay. The persuasive essay is very much shorter, and it's just the author presenting their claim and evidence to support that. That's all they do. Versus an argumentative takes it a step further and actually argues as opposed to just stating their side. So each time they make a claim, they then tell us what the other side says in regards to this claim. So this would be people who disagree with them. And then they would provide evidence and poke holes in that argument. So that's why it's called argumentative, because they really are arguing against another side. So again, argumentative essays, they rely heavily on information, not emotion. Persuasive essays tend to be a little bit more emotional versus when we go to write this, we will kind of avoid emotion words and we will just stick with finding hardcore evidence for the most part. All right, our next vocabulary term is issue. This is the first thing that I really want to touch on. This is the main topic that the writing is discussing. So anytime we get an article in class or when you guys go out to research, or even when you guys decide on what you want to write about, all of that is going to be an issue. So it's your main topic. So it could be, animal abuse, it could be gun rights, any of those things. Those are issues. The next vocabulary term would be author's claim. So the articles we'll be reading, the authors all have claims. This would be their opinion about their topic or their issue. And they will either be for or against the topic. So these pieces definitely would be considered biased, meaning these people are for or against something, therefore they're only finding evidence, that would be for those things or against those things, as opposed to a neutral source which provides both sides and the author never gives you their opinion about the topic itself. So an author's claim, like I said, is the author's opinion, and all of us will ultimately, when we go to write our essays, we will have to make a claim, which will be a part of our thesis statements. The next portion is arguments. Okay, so once we've developed our claim, we're for or against whatever our topic is, we then have to come up with arguments. So this would be the reasons why. Okay, that's another word we use for arguments, reasons. So reasons why our claim or our opinion is correct. So the graphic off to the side here, I think, does a really good job. In the upper portion, we have our claim. So, you are for or against something, or you agree or disagree. And then you have your 3 reasons why. Ultimately, that will also be our thesis statement. And then our body paragraphs, those reasons essentially make up each of our body paragraphs. And that'll be the focus of those. Then, with our argumentative essay, we have the counter arguments and rebuttals. So this is what I was talking about In that first slide, the main difference between an argumentative versus a persuasive essay. Argumentative essays have counter arguments and rebuttals. So what those are is a statement of what the other side says that contradicts one of the author's main arguments. So again, it's what the other side says that disagrees with the point that you were trying to make. And the graphic does a good job. So the counter argument, you would state the other side argues that, and you would tell us, what do they say that is kind of arguing against your point. And then the rebuttal portion is when you pivot and then you poke holes in their counter argument. So to prove that wrong, you have to then give that rebuttal and then, of course, produce evidence to prove that their argument is ultimately incorrect or weak or whatever point you're trying to make against them. But that, again, is the main detail, I guess, of an argumentative essay. That's really what sets it apart from everything else, is we actually do have to have arguments. And within our essay, we are just going to do this once as opposed to 3 times. We do it with our third body paragraph. All right, so then we have types of evidence. So once we get our claim, so our opinion about whatever topic or issue we want to write about, and then we come up with our 3 arguments or our 3 reasons why that claim is correct, we then have to find evidence to support each of those reasons. This is really kind of the nitty-gritty of an essay, but this is also what makes our essay strong. We can go ahead and have reasons and arguments and opinions all we want, but nobody gets to believe us unless we can find hardcore proof or evidence. So we need strong and correct evidence. We got to give multiple pieces to support our opinions. And there are 3 types of evidence, so that's what we want to go over. The first are statistics. So statistics, of course, would be numbers and percentages from studies and polls. So if they did a study and then, they say like 87% of these people, saw this, that would be a statistic. So a lot of statistics, usually most of them involve some sort of number or percentage. So when you see those within an article, when you're researching, that is a statistic. That's one type of evidence. The second type of evidence would be expert opinion. So this is somebody whose credentials are given. So credentials meaning, what their career is, what they've studied, those types of things. So like, Dr. whoever, a psychologist from, Harvard University, something like that. That would be their credentials. So what they do for a living and what they're qualified to kind of give an opinion about. If they give an opinion, we consider that a strong piece of evidence because that person, has studied for years. They're very well educated in whatever issue or topic that you're writing about. And so therefore we trust what they say. And then your last type of evidence is an example. So these would be real life instances of, something happening that you're pointing out. That could also happen, within whatever points that you're making. So real life examples would be your third piece of evidence. All right, so we are going to practice identifying these types of evidence because again, when we are reading a couple articles in class and then when you guys are researching, you're going to have to be looking for these types of evidence. Well, I'm going to read a couple of quick paragraphs, I guess, for you, and then you guys get to decide whether or not it is a statistic, an expert opinion, or an example. So here's your first one. Requiring all students to wear the same cardigans, slacks, or skirts is a practice employed throughout history and all over the world. England, for example, even required uniforms in all public schools for a time. Recently, it seems American schools, desperate for peace and order, are willing to follow this trend in order to get their students on the right track. So decide, is this a statistic, expert opinion, or example? Next one, educational psychologist and Today contributor Michelle Borba thinks uniforms are a good idea because they create emotional safety at school, which is pivotal to learning. However, having kids wear uniforms will reduce bullying because kids won't pick on each other for how they're dressed, she said. And in urban settings, gang affiliation through dress will go down as well. Uniforms also reduce distractions, Borba said. It gets down to, let's focus on the things we're supposed to be doing, called learning, she said. Is that a statistic, expert opinion, or example? Third, this is a chart. It's titled Types of Bullying Experienced by 10 to 18-year-olds, and then they have percentages of students who may have been cyberbullied by. The first bar graph is 14.3% have said they've experienced bullying by a mean or hurtful comment. 13.3% have said they've been bullied by rumors online. 8.4% said they had been threatened with harm through a cell phone text. 7.2% have been threatened with harm online. 6.7% were individuals masquerading as a victim online. And then 5% were individuals posting mean or hurtful pictures of the victim online. Is this a statistic, expert opinion, or example? Fourth phrase. While studies haven't shown overwhelming evidence that school uniforms fail to reduce behavioral problems or create a sense of equality among students of varying socioeconomic classes, studies haven't shown that they deliver on any of these promises either. A University of Houston study found a 90% increase in attendance when a uniform policy was implemented at a school. Is this a statistic, expert opinion, or example? Your next example. Representative Sanchez, who sponsored the Megan Meyer Cyberbullying Prevention Act, writes in the Huffington Post, rather than build character, bullying can cause children to become anxious, fearful, unhappy, and even cause them to be physically sick. A young person exposed to repeated, severe, and hostile bullying online is deserving of protections because bullying puts them at risk for depression and suicide. Is this a statistic, expert opinion, or example? And your last one. Over the past few years, several high-profile cases that have ended in tragedy have brought national attention to cyberbullying. In 2003, a 13-year-old Vermont teenager, Ryan Halligan, killed himself after he was taunted incessantly online and received numerous instant messages. Halligan's father became an anti-bullying activist. In the following year, the Vermont state legislature passed an anti-cyberbullying law requiring schools to institute disciplinary policies addressing both on and off-campus bullying. Is this a statistic, expert opinion, or example?